Welcome to episode 5 of the Reality Creators Podcast. Today I have Deniz, who he's been one of the most successful guys that I've seen like come up the ranks in sales. I've worked with him a bit coaching. He's invested into many coaching programs, and his success just stands out more than a lot of people's that I see. So I wanted to bring him on and kind of figure out like both how he was able to do that, and Deniz, I'd love to hear from you. Like, what do you think it was specifically that allowed you to just like stick it out to win and to get to where you are right now?
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me, by the way. I think the main thing was, um, I think we can start here. I feel like a lot of the bad things that happen to us in life actually happen for like a greater good later down the line. Let's start there. And I think before I even got introduced to sales, and by the way, guys, I'm 27, I'm going to turn 28 in like a month and a half. I'm not young, just like Jeff. Jeff is a little bit older than me. He's like my sales brother. I always ask him stuff when I'm like stuck. But yeah, man, it's like I lived through a good amount of things. I used to live in the US. I sound very American because I lived there for 8 years, both high school and college, graduated from an American institution. But when I left college, I couldn't stay in the US anymore. That was kind of like my first kick in the nuts because I'm like, I grew up very American. Then at the end of the day, I couldn't stay. Then I had to go to Canada for a year. And that's when I broke up with my girlfriend, all of that like complete wiped out. Stayed in Canada for a year, then came back to Turkey. And I was very afraid of always come back to Turkey when I lived in the US because it's a much nicer place than Turkey. Then come back to Turkey, I was like, all right, I'm kind of at like ground zero. That's when personal development kicked in. And I read through a lot of things. I think the first 5 months I was back in Turkey, I was mostly in lockdown. And that's when I picked up a lot of Jim Rohn, a lot of self-help books, which most of them kind of give the same thing. I don't like the area of self-help. I think self-improvement is a much nicer path to go down on because self-help is kind of like, oh, just believe in yourself, blah, blah. But self-development is more like, hey, there's always a higher version of yourself that you can chase. And that should be the end goal. Right. And I was always like, all right, dude, I know that I'm a hardworking person. If other people can do it, I can do it. And I think the biggest thing about investing in these a lot of sales communities is that I just want to be close to guys that were doing what I wanted to do. And I think the feedback loop is the biggest thing. It's like when you talk to somebody and they're like, hey, dude, like I've made like 15 to 20K a month. Like pretty much I've been doing that for a year now. And you're like, oh, okay, like, you're not insanely different. Like it's not like this guy's a genius or anything like that. I'll be the first one to say, I'm not a genius, guys. Like I was just like, there's just a little gap as far as what they know, what they've been able to achieve. And I think the biggest thing about sales is the fake aspect of it. Like how long you're willing to stick with it until your breakthrough happens. For me, I was in sales for like 8 months before I ever made like above 10K a month. I think the first 8 months I was in sales, you know better than anybody else. I think my highest paycheck was 5K. Then I got on the offer that I'm on now. I waited around a little bit, but my second month in the offer, I made 12K in commissions, then like 16. I like went through that phase of making above 20 for like 2 months because everything kind of like lined up. I was just selling the crap out of it. And yeah, man, then it just became a reality.
Yeah. Yeah, man. You said so many things I want to touch on. At the very beginning, bad things lead to good things. Now, I know weren't you like playing a sport and got injured and that caused you to move somewhere else or something like that?
No, no, no. So when I was 13, funny enough, I played in the best basketball team in Turkey, like the absolute best. The second place is like my team was so good that if you took the first starting five, then you took the bench and you put them in different teams and you let them compete all around, they'd be the last two teams fighting for the championship. Like that's the level of was that. And going into ninth grade, they actually asked me to go like semi-pro, but it will not allow for me to go to high school because they're like, hey, like Tuesday, you're going to have an FA game. You're not going to get a regular education. And this when I found my scholarship to play in the US through a friend. And I was like, I want to be able to go to high school and play basketball at a high level. Then that's what led me to go to the US. The reason why I stopped playing it is I feel like with the scenario, you can make a Netflix special. My coach's wife had breast cancer in 11th grade, going to 12th grade. He beat it, but he decided to cheat on her with her best friend. And for everybody that knows, like kind of like varsity sports in the US, your coach kind of leads your recruitment things. Like anybody that's interested in you goes to the coach first. My coach had a midlife crisis. He didn't care about my basketball season. It ended up getting burned. Then at that point, I was turning 19, going to college, and I said, let me be a normal person instead of playing basketball because I just knew like already like my knees were kind of like getting weak, right? And I was just like, dude, you're not gonna turn pro, and basketball is not going to pay your paycheck when you're done with it. The best that you can get is like a decent scholarship at a school. I'm not sure if you're even going to do for 4 years. It was a hard decision, but I think it led to the best. And at that point, I was kind of like fed up with it. I thought it was a bad thing, but it actually turned up being a very good thing for me because I was finally a normal human being instead of basketball being my life 24/7. I always tell people, I'm like, I really started living when I was 19 because before that, I only played basketball.
Yeah, yeah, and that was your whole world, and then you had this paradigm shift when the coach kind of disappeared, and that I guess opened up new avenues. Did it feel like at the time it was shutting the
Mhm.
door on basketball?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because the entire narrative behind me moved from Turkey to the US when I was in ninth grade, like 14 years old, was I'm going to play there, then I'm going to get scholarship to play in college. Then I will eventually turn pro because my dad used to be a pro player. My granddad used to be a pro basketball player. Like we have a family of pro athletes. So that's kind of like the expectation. But at the same time, I was just like, no, like I can just go down my own path. And shout out to my mom. She always supported me. She was like, hey, whatever you feel like is right in your heart, just do that.
Amazing. Yeah. So now in your sales journey, you also had things that you could label as bad that ended up leading to good. What's the biggest thing that
Oh
sales
yeah.
do?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I would say that was bad was I always believe that anybody getting into remote sales, a humble beginning is the best thing that you can have because that's what sales is. Like nothing is like given to you. You have to kind of like go out there and get it. And you're going to run into a lot of no's before you can get a sale. It was kind of like the same thing. Remember, it was like not last November, but the November before. I had one sales gig as a setter. OT was not met at all. Then that's when I joined that coaching group that like we kind of like met each other at. And I remember messaging and you were like, "Hey, I have this like tree like setter role that this company is looking for. You want to come and give it a try?" Right? That's when everything started, and I'm so glad that happened because at that point in life, I believe I had about $500 to my name. Like I was quite rock bottom because I was a very good marketing ops guy with a lot of startups, but I took the full faith to leave that entirely, then go into sales, kind of like take a leap of faith. And I've kind of seen rock bottom. I'm not the only person that has done that. Many people that have done that before. But that's when it started like turning out. And that's when I was like so thankful that I think my first paycheck was $1,000, but I was so thankful for it. I'm like, oh my God, I can pay rent and I can buy food. And there's nothing wrong with living off of turkey cheese sandwiches for like 2, 3 months when you're building back up. That's okay. Believe me, I think I appreciated those times even more than now because I think that's when I was very happy with sales because every time I went to bed, I was so anxious for I was going to be able to pay rent the next month. There's just something special about that.
Yeah, and that feeling is long, long gone for you now, right?
Oh yeah, dude, I get like a 10K if I don't feel a thing. Oh, I could feel like that again.
Normal, yeah.
Yeah, because like that's what you expect at the end of the day. But no, you still get that high when you're like if you close like 4 or 5 deals in a day, that will happen magically every like 2 months, 3 months. Yeah, I think that would be the only thing that can come close to it.
Yeah. So when you finally did go down like the personal development rabbit hole, you said you started with self-help books and then realized they're all saying the same thing. and then, move more towards self-development. What are the biggest patterns that you've noticed? Because I agree, like at a certain point, all the self-help books are telling you the same thing. So like what things are the biggest positive like takeaways you got from that experience?
Self-help is just like, I think the biggest things help books are trying to tell you is like the past is the past and like it's okay. Like you can just accept it and move on simply. Like you can literally just mess up and be like, hey, I messed up, then move on. That's okay. You always have like a new blank page to turn like the notebook to. I think that's the biggest thing about self-help. Now I think self-development is much nicer, and I'll kind of like I should delete that a little bit. But one thing I would say is that I think self-development is a great thing because it will make you take ownership over everything that went wrong. And at the end of the day, if you can do that, the thing is you have the control. If you can't do that, you believe that the world is just happening to you. But if you can take extreme ownership over everything that went wrong, you're the one that's holding the ropes, and you can change the way the course the sail is going.
What allowed you to understand this?
I think a lot of that was anybody that might be looking to go through this is that I think you have to be kind to yourself. Actually, I don't believe in being very hard on yourself and being like, oh, I suck. Blah, blah. No, no, no. Don't ever tell yourself that you suck. You don't suck. It's always okay to say, hey, the information that I have at that point, I make this decision and it didn't work out. But now I can make a new decision and we can hopefully change everything.
Yeah. But do you think it was self-help books or self-development in general that allowed you to see that you actually could take ownership? Because I feel like people who believe the world is happening to them, they're not even aware that there's another way to think.
Yeah, dude, I was actually thinking about this a lot because you and I always talk about dating life a little bit. And I think that a lot of the people that have like a 9 to 5, I think the philosophy part comes in a lot where like thinking about like your life as a whole, kind of like taking a step back and thinking about it is going to be a big thing. A lot of people are just so caught up in like working, making money, they feel like they need to socialize to the point they cannot take a step back, sit somewhere for 2 hours, no phone, nothing, and just think about what's going on in their life. I think being able to do that just puts you way further ahead.
Yes. How often do you do that?
Dude, I do it often. I do it very often, at least once a week. Or like, I have a dog. Every time I take my dog out for a walk, I never take the phone with me. I don't even take a clock with me. I'm like, hey, let's just go. And there's like a lot of study behind this too. Walking and thinking at the same time neurologically is going to give you a different like thinkability versus you just sitting down and thinking, which is also fine. I think a good mix of both is always great.
Are you sitting there thinking, like consciously making your next move, or are you just kind of detaching from everything, like zoning out almost, or just getting in flow with what you're doing?
Both. If I feel like this is just my mechanism. If I feel like I'm a little bit nervous about what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 months, and finances can play a lot into this as well, I will just write everything out. I'm a very analytical guy. I have two whiteboards right in front of me in my home office. I literally grab a Sharpie and I'm like, worst case scenario, we're here financially. Best case scenario, we're here financially. Can we just accept that fact? Like, can we just work on that? Sure. Okay. Then I'm completely like aligned with that. I'm like, okay, that's where we are at. That's okay. At least I know I have control, right? That's one piece of it. Then I completely detach from everything, then look at it more in a spiritual. Then I'm like, okay, where do we feel like we're at? Where do we feel like we want to go? If finances were not a piece of it, how would I behave?
Mm. I like how you said feel too, because I think that's a lot of men, like we've been programmed to think that we shouldn't feel. And that's where, the gut feeling comes, and that's where you truly get the right answer, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a little bit of that goes into the like a lot of men cannot feel, right? A lot of that I think goes into kind of like the red pill movement where they're like, hey, you cannot let women know how you feel and things like that. I know, dude, like you're a human being, that's okay. And I think about that a lot. I'm like, I wouldn't want to be next to a person where I cannot tell them how I feel. That's like the most basic human thing that you can do.
Yeah.
And that's for everything.
Yeah. Do you call your like sitting in silence practice or walking in silence practice? Do you call it meditation?
I don't call it meditation. I call it more of like a mind dump. I'm like, hey, just think through everything that's kind of like bugging your head.
Hmm. That's really interesting. Yeah, I don't think a lot of people take time, period. Like I think that especially with these smartphones, like
Mm.
nonstop consuming. And there is this big loop in consuming content. Like you could watch all the Hermosi videos you want and all that stuff, all of anybody who's really good, but that doesn't actually take you anywhere. You get to a point where you're just
Yeah.
like, you're not even, you haven't taken action on anything you've listened to. So why would you take action on this next thing? And then it's just like a passive consumption loop, I guess.
Yeah. And Hormoz even says it himself. He's like, dude, you'll just learn by executing.
Yeah.
Don't go out here and listen to 10,000 of things. And I think he was the first one to really make me take action on like, hey, I need to get a sales job and learn like how to do the thing. Let me just learn in the job. Because before that, I like listened to Zig Ziglar's tape. That was like my first sales training. Brian Tracy,
Yeah.
just very old school guys, which is so funny because like back in the day, you can tell that they were killers, but like you cannot apply the same thing in today's age because it literally would not work at all. That would sound kind of very dumb, which I'm pretty sure as all sales guys we know, like me down to dumb at some point of a call, and you're like, well, that was kind of just weird.
I love Zig Ziglar stuff. I agree. Some of the older stuff doesn't apply, but he was also one of my first. Actually, the first thing I listened to was like Grant Cardone's Sell Every Sold book, and I've never really loved Grant Cardone's sales. But Zig
Yeah.
Ziglar, it's just high energy. Like I loved him. I love his voice too, and how he gets
Yeah.
into it. So I thought
Oh, his accent is amazing.
exactly.
And one thing I love about Zig Ziglar is that the way like where he can point his life changing as a place is Charlotte, North Carolina. Same thing happened to me. I went through probably the worst 4 months of my life in Charlotte, North Carolina, and that led to everything happening.
Hmm. And that was that 4 months like the basketball situation?
No, the 4 months was I was done with college, right? I signed up to go to a community college just when I was still kind of with my ex-girlfriend, but like we kind of decided to move to Charlotte where I want to move to Raleigh instead. Then we ended up breaking up. Then I ended up living with this cop ex-military guy for a while, just a bunch of crap. That's kind of like my last 4 months in the US before I was like, okay, I can get a job. They cannot sponsor me. There's no legal way for me to stay here. And I don't believe in being an illegal alien at all. I basically grew up in the US for 8 years. I know what's flexible, what's not flexible. And there's one thing that you don't do in the US. You never want to fall into an illegal immigrant category. You can totally get banned from getting in the United States ever.
Yeah. Dang. Okay. So it was like just the realization, I guess, that you weren't going to be living here anymore, or the possibility. Okay. Or living in the States.
Mhm.
Where are you right now?
Mhm. Uh,
Where are you right now? Are you in
I'm in
Turkey?
Turkey now. I got back from Barcelona. Yeah, I got back from Barcelona 2 days ago, but I'm moving back there. Fingers crossed. I get the visa. I'm gone.
Very nice. Cool. Well, I wanted to show you, I bring this up on pretty much every podcast. I wanted to see how this resonates with you because
Mhm.
most people find it to be truth. I'm sure you've seen it on Twitter a lot recently. Have you seen this map of consciousness?
Yeah, yeah. You send it to me on WhatsApp.
Cool. Yeah, man. So I'm curious, like, has becoming aware of it or using or thinking about it as a map of something that in our experience that we call life being different than what you initially thought?
Oh yeah. I think consciousness, or some people even call it awareness. I think you can use synonyms for it, right? I think that's a huge thing, especially like the way you feel. Especially like a lot of things that might get you pissed off that are like the small things. I think being able to question like why does this even bother me to begin with
Yeah.
is when you really start making some like strides. Because Alex Hormoz is a very good friend. It's called Dr. Kashi. He does talk about this every once in a while. I end up running into his content every once in a while. I love it. He's like no outside force should be able to change how you feel about anything. Like why are you getting so pissed about somebody's comment on Instagram, let's say, or something somebody said like on a sales call, let's say, like why are you getting upset over what's the prospect is saying? And I always have this thinking, I'm like, we lived our life separately. We've been exposed to totally different things that made us who we are today. And you're totally speaking from your existence of what brought you to today. And I'm totally speaking from my existence of what brought me to today. We have never been exposed to the same thing except the time that we spent together. I'm like, of course you're going to disagree on a lot of things. Of course, because you have not been exposed to the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So many things running through my mind right now. Have you had a situation where, I mean, I know you've had many situations where you get a really good vibe from somebody, but have you had a situation where you've gotten like a pretty bad vibe from someone and then not trusted it and then been proven like, huh, I should have listened to that vibe?
Oh yeah, a lot of times. I think like mostly how I make my friends and things like that these days. I think intuition is something you really have to trust. Yeah. I think that's when it really happened when I was picking this offer. Because funny enough, there was an offer that I accepted 1 week before I joined this offer. And just talking to the guys, seeing like how they handled the onboarding process, I was just like, I'm just not getting the good vibes from. Then that was kind of like a hey, kind of like a red flag. Then I was like, hey, can I like start listening to some sales calls? Obviously, you need to take them at some point. Then the way they sold was really not in alignment with who I was as a person. Uh, Not to be mean, but like it sounded very douchey the way they sold. I was like, not me. And that changed my entire perspective. Like, I think if I were to ever change companies, which I don't think that I will unless something crazy happens, um, I think that before I accept anything, I'll be like, hey, can you guys give me like a sales call? Like, I just want to see like what the vibe of your calls are like and see like if I'm that type of person. I think more people should do it when hiring sales rep. Just give them like one or two calls and be like, hey man, like this is kind of how we sell. Like, do you feel like you're our type of person? If not, that's okay. Because like, selling differently can mean a lot of different things. But like overall, hey man, like this is what we follow. What do you think? Do you feel like you can do it this way? I think a lot
You're
of people should be more
so right.
transparent about that.
Yeah. Or at least in the late stages, if they're going to do multiple stages of the hiring process, for sure. Because there was one offer that I was thinking about joining that would have been like 30K per month. The top closer was making 30K per month. And the next two closers were making over 10. So I listened to one of the calls in their process and I was like, yeah, not in alignment. Like, so I didn't even continue. Like, that was to get ready for the mock call, right? The second part of the process was like, the way that you're talking about how you're selling this to people and like, talking about deception, I'm just like, no, don't want to do that. And
Yeah.
I already was questioning it, but that confirmed it. And then I knew somebody who was a setter for them and left because he said like, yeah, as he was doing follow-ups, people were like, never call me again. That was such a horrible experience. So I think they were like really hard selling, or at
Yeah.
least the guy who was doing really well. But yeah, I did not listen to that vibe multiple times and got burned with offers.
Mhm.
Right. Now I'm a lot better at spotting it and just in general. I think it's as you become more self-aware, which you become more self-aware by doing what you're talking about, sitting and thinking things out or meditating or
Mhm.
whatever, there's many other practices. I'd love to hear what other ones that you have, but you start to notice and feel when things aren't in alignment. And when you trust and listen to that, then you make the right decision, like always. That's what I found.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I'm pretty sure you read The Alchemist. I feel like you would be a fan of The Alchemist as a book.
I don't think I have. I have so many books.
Really?
Honestly, right now maybe I've read a summary of it, but
Mhm.
I think again, this is where, like, I don't want to say all books say the same thing, but I kind of think that most books are like a derivative of the Bible and the Quran, and I don't know what else, like the Bhagavad
Mhm.
Gita, like all the spiritual texts, I think say the same thing with a different copywriter. That's my like
Yeah,
of our experience. I know it's not accurate, but I think it's a funny way to look at it. So
yeah. I would highly recommend you at least like listen to The Alchemist or something like that because like I'm not a huge book reader. Funny enough, I don't actually read any fiction, nonfiction, many of them, unless it's about business or it's going to maybe gain a certain type of skill set. I actually don't read. Like I'm the most boring person ever. But I read The Alchemist. I read it in 2 days, the entire book. And it
wow.
was amazing because the spiritual journey that the main character was going through was amazing. And they believe in a lot of omens in the book. I'll just kind of give you kind of like a spoiler. But the thing is, I think omens, quote unquote, whatever you want to call them, I think God is a way of kind of like showing you things, kind of making you feel things. I think that you're more open to signs, you more the more you understand. Like I was just in Barcelona for 10 days. And I only took the trip because I was like, I want to see where I would like to move here if I want to live here. And like as I was questioning some things, the city was kind of showing me the answers. One of them being a very simple example is that I'm a very like dynamics guy. It's like, hey, how's everything going to happen in the city? I'm very well prepared in that sense. And I'm like, okay, like I take my dog to the vet, like to go to a spa. I'm like, I wonder if they have those here. And like I literally look across the street and there's a dog spa. I'm like, okay, like a lot of the things, like and multiple things that I thought that way, and I'm like, oh, it's right here. Like I'm literally walking, like it's literally across the street from me. Like it couldn't be more auto.
Yeah. I believe we can actually influence that. It's like you're, Grand Theft Auto and you turn around and it's generating whatever's in front of you is generating, right?
Hmm.
As an analogy. And I'm curious, did you ever do like the mindset folder exercise? I'm sure would have recommended that to you.
Yeah, I think you did, and I think I did a part of it. I think I did Tej Dosa's challenge for a bit. Then I don't remember what happened, but I was like, dude, I cannot even take my head out of work to be able to continue with it. I think I need to get back in. It was a great thing because like it was making you realize more. It makes you journal a lot. I do like that.
So that was a clean your inner world.
Yeah,
Right.
clean your inner world.
Man, that is, if anybody's listening, you should take that course. I should get Tej to sponsor this podcast. I plug it. I think I plug his stuff in like every time I'm coaching somebody or on the podcast. Yeah. So that's going deep. I don't know. Did you in the first week, did you have any breakthroughs?
I think I had a couple of breakthroughs. I don't remember it because like I did it like a couple weeks ago. Like
Okay.
I think it might be even close to when I first started my offer, which I took a lot of like extreme ownership over like building a website, VSL, and all of that. You remember we talked around that time. I think that's when it kind of like started going a little bit like, hey, dude, I don't even know if I can do this for 30 minutes, type of thing. Because I was like literally waking up, working, then going to bed, which I was happy. I think in life you do need those sprints to make you feel like alive. You're like, hey, I can actually do a lot of output if I need to.
Yeah. I had on day 4, one of the things that I read in the course, it was like, start your morning by saying like your name and today was an amazing day. And then I even included more details. And I said like, I made more money than I ever made. And then that day I had 4 closes, right? Which I had never done before. Plus I had just an epic day, went like midday swimming in the river in a rainforest. It was just like so amazing. So yeah, I'm curious, do you spend any time visualizing or like looking at things in that way of what you are planning to create in the future?
hmm I don't think I do like a full on visualization. And the reason behind that is I honestly don't know where I want to live, like full on. I think I'm getting there. I've been exploring a lot. Like for the past 6 months, I've been to like 8 different countries in Europe. I literally like explore. And like when I go to place, I'm weird. Like I don't do any of the tourist stuff, anything like that. I literally just like examine the way people behave, almost like a sociological study. I will pick up random conversations with strangers that are local, and I ask them very random things. Like I'll ask about your social dynamics, things like that. How do you guys do here? How do you guys you do this? Like culturally, how do you guys feel about a certain thing? Really get a good understanding of that. And I think visualization is one thing, but I think traveling really comes in there because like you visually need to see like, hey, what am I going to visualize? And now I think my full-on picture's coming together. And like I don't like to visualize like 100%, but I like to put like certain things up. It's like, hey, this is the type of person that I want to be. This is what I want to work on. Like these are the things that I want to be working on in a couple of years. And like just set like a roadmap as far as like where you're trying to go. I don't believe in like hard setting the entire scene, but like certain things that I would like that accomplish.
Yeah. When I was like really deep in the self-development trenches, I actually have a couple of notebooks here I'm really excited to reread. One of them is from Clean Your Inner World. But I had drawn this like 30-year life map, and I'm ahead of schedule right now. Which is awesome. Like everything that I had on the timeline so far I've achieved, and I've done other exercises that I thought were really cool, that were like planned very specifically a day in the future, what it looks like. And like in the past, it was like, I wake up wherever I want to, I'm completely free, I can travel the world, I'm a digital nomad, like had all that stuff in there. And that's what I've been doing for the past 2 years. And so incredible. So, you never mapped anything out like that, or like you haven't been clear enough, it sounds like, on like, this is exactly what I want to create.
Yeah, I think if you put it that way, I did map it out a good amount. I actually have kind of like a thing here for like 6 months. Numbers wise, I've not been able to hit all of that, but that's not complete depending on me because like lead flow and things like that change within the business, right? I don't control that. And that's when I was like, hey, some of the things that I cannot control, I'm just gonna put that to the side. But right now, even though the plan is just a little bit late, I think we're literally on track to do everything.
Amazing.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm like, yeah, dude, like we're kind of on track to do everything. One of my biggest things was, I think this is the thing that changed everything for me. Back in October, a friend of mine had a wedding, and I haven't seen my college friends since I attended the wedding. And at that time, for some reason, my mom was like, instead of like moving to a super nice house, just buy yourself a car. At least like you can always sell the car and get the money back. I was like, oh, that kind of solves a lot of my problems. But financially, I was just a little bit low, right? I was kind of thinking like, should I go to this wedding? Should I not go to this wedding? Because like going to the US is gonna take a bunch of funds. And I was like, screw it, let's do it. I landed in the US. That week was my record week as far as the amount of clothes that I had.
Amazing.
Like it literally 2x paid for the trip the week that I landed there. Then I went to the wedding. And it was beautiful. I saw all my friends and I'm like, yeah, man, like these are things that I'm working on. And yeah, I got to catch up with a lot of my friends. Then I went to see my best friend in Rome in December when he was visiting with his girlfriend. I think a lot of freedom stuff that I wanted, it has been achieved. Like when I was like starting sales, like when you first met me, all the goals that I had in place are being like achieved right now. The
Easily.
last goal being like moving to Europe. And like once that is done too, everything that I imagined has happened.
So one of the things that you filled out on your onboarding form when you were working with me was you wanted to be fed fruit like from a hot Latina, like a Greek painting. And so what happened to Latin America?
Latin America thing was the thing is it has a lot to do with my dog. because regulations and things like that. And at the same time, I believe this is what I wanted. I've traveled to a lot of places, right? I'm like, I like a structured society, but I don't want it to be too structured. And there are like certain things where I was like, all right, mechanics wise, how would that go? And the biggest thing was Jesse Isler gave me this idea. And it was talking about his grandparents and his mother and all of that. And he was like, all right, how often do I see them in a yearly basis now? He's like, maybe I see them twice a year, right? Thanksgiving, Christmas, that's it. And he's like, all right, give or take, how many years do they have to live? And he's like, maybe 10 years, give or minus. He's like, holy shit, with this pace, I'm only going to be able to see my parents 20 more times, and that's it. And for me, my mom is like, I grew up with a single mom. She means a lot to me. I love her to death. If I moved to Latin America, I wouldn't be super far away from her. And when I lived in the US, like there were times where I didn't see my mom for like 3 years, 4 years, and things like that. I didn't want it to be like that again because since I've been back in Turkey for the past 3 years, I can tell that it's been so precious to her to be able to see me as often as she wants to. If I move to Spain, I can have all the experiences that I want out of Latin America. But at the same time, I'm only a 3 hour flight away from Turkey. And my mom would be able to come for like a weekend whenever she wanted, instead of taking like a day and a half trip there, back, vice versa.
That's incredible. That reminds me, you were talking about going to the wedding to see all the friends. I contemplated, because I had to fly like 20 hours to go to a friend's wedding, and I contemplated, should I go or should I not go? And it was such an amazing experience. Like that made me realize that anytime like family or friends like ask me to come somewhere, I'm like, I'm doing it. No questions asked. And so I think that is, yeah, something that when we idealize the lifestyle of like moving to Dubai and traveling all over the world and stuff like that, a lot of the times we don't even think about what the family situation is going to look like, right? Because those images have kind of all been impressed as like the single bachelor or whatever. But yeah, it's interesting to think in that lens for just being closer to the parents, and that being like kind of the biggest driving decision. Plus, you're gonna get a lot of the same experiences anyway in Spain.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, believe me, Latinos were hitting on me when I was there. I started learning Spanish ASAP. I was just like,
Yep.
this is crazy. Yeah, it's so funny. I'll tell you a story. You'll love this. I was in Laram. It's a part of Barcelona where like there's a lot of pickpockets and things like that. You have to watch out for, right? A very beautiful woman and a man were trying to talk to me, and I was like, I think they're trying. They were like, do you know French? I was like, I don't know French. They're like, do you know Spanish? I'm like, I don't know Spanish. And they were like, do you know English? I'm like, yeah, I know English. Then they started asking me a couple of questions, and I started putting my hands in my pocket because I'm like, I don't want to be like they're distracting me and somebody's gonna come and take my shit from behind me. Because like I lived in Turkey, man. I have like recognition around that. I'm like, they could be trying to pull something off. We talked for a little bit, but they were about to leave. And this beautiful woman just looks at me. She goes, like, with the 5 words of English that she knows, she just goes, you look so beautiful. I was like, you were trying to hit on me. Like, like this is what you were actually trying to do. Okay. So I was like, I need to learn Spanish, man. I gotta be able to these people.
Yeah. Yeah, there needs to be a dating specific Spanish course, accelerated Spanish learning. No, I found just learning. How's your Spanish coming along?
I didn't know any Spanish about 10 days ago. It's coming along great. But I'm gonna go very systematized way of going about it. Because I read a book named Limitless by this guy, Jim Quick. He felt when he was like 6 years old, his brain did not fully develop. So at school, they'd be like, this kid is freaking stupid. He cannot learn. And he was like, I'm just going to dedicate my entire life to figuring out how people learn. Then he wrote this book, Limitless, on memory and how your brain functions and all of that good stuff. I'm going to use all of his things. I'll probably piff like $1,000 into his like accelerated thing and just be able to learn Spanish like in record time.
Yeah, man, I noticed you pay for speed. You were talking about earlier. You just wanted to be around all the people that were doing what you wanted to do. Sounds like that has proven over and over again. I'm seeing it in myself. I just joined a mastermind, which has really opened up a lot of like, third day that I was in there, somebody's like, hey, can anybody help me sell this Lambo? There's a 50K finder's fee if you can get somebody to buy this car. Like, friend of mine's looking. So what is that something you're just going to continue to do forever? Keep
Oh
paying
yeah.
for information.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The thing is like the way I look at investments is like very flat. I'm like, all right, can I make this entire money back? Give or take. Like it does not have to be, it can be indirectly, it can be directly. Like, am I going to get 100% ROI? Let's say it costs 5K. If it will make me $5,000 and 10 cents, I'm ROI positive. I'm always going to invest in it. Depending on what the time is, what I'm looking for and things like that. If it can accelerate me going to where I want to go, and I'm like, hey, at the end of the day, like, dude, this is going to ROI, invest in it. If you're in the position, though, of course, like if you have like $10 to your name and you want to invest in something 5K, maybe don't do it. Then again, that's how I got started with sales, and I really had to negotiate like a nice split pay when I first joined my first program, that I was able to pay it off. But yeah.
Yeah, Larry. I don't know. Do you know who Larry is?
Yeah, I know that.
Yeah, he was on the podcast, I think episode 2. He was telling me when he first got into sales, he like took out a PayPal credit or something like that. Like he got closed on the
Yeah.
sales program, and it was like the best program ever, right? Because he applied everything. I kind of think that pretty much all programs, mentorships, things like that, they work if you actually put in the work. And I think that a
Mm.
lot of people just don't, or they thought it was going to be easier, so they don't fully do
Yeah.
everything that's necessary.
Oh yeah, dude, like if you pay any type of mentorship, it's on you to like squeeze the most juice out of the orange, 100%. If you expect people to be kind of like on your butt and be like keep you accountable, quote unquote, then you might already be kind of lost, man. That's what I think personally. I'm like, it's on you to go and squeeze the most juice out of that orange. Don't wait for people to do that for you. It's kind of childish at this point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some people pay, what's interesting, some people pay just for the accountability, right? It's like,
Yeah.
if I pay for personal training at the gym and have a trainer waiting for me, I'm going to go every time. And then I'm going to turn off my mind and like what I'm doing. So I don't need to even like, it just becomes more automatic. So I think that can be an example of it paying for accountability working. And just in general, when you pay, like the larger amount you pay, the more serious you take something, just period.
Mhm.
But there's still people who will pay 10K for a program and not take it seriously.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like some people pay like $8,000 and they're like, whatever. Which I'm like, dude, how?
Because you're so good at closing them. That's how.
Yeah. I'm just like, dude, like I don't know why they did not follow up with it. Then I don't know. I've always been like a self-starter. I don't know. Like as far as I'm like, I don't need somebody to hold me accountable. If I want to do it, I'll just do it.
Yeah. I'm curious, now that you know sales and marketing, how do you see the world differently?
You will like this. So if you know sales and marketing, Jeff has this thing. He's like, I can look at your girlfriend and I can tell how good you're in sales. Because if your girlfriend's ugly, you're just not a good salesman. And thing is that I think you come to the terms like, hey, there's a lot of ways where I can win it my way. And I do it all the time, negotiating small stuff, things like that. Not the way that I know sales. That's one thing. Marketing personal brand, if you can make yourself look like this glamorous person and be able to get in touch with whatever girl that you want, right? And but the way I see it is that then you have to be very honest with yourself. Is that really like, are you trying to portray something that you're not to be able to get these people come to you? Or do you want people that accept you for who you are and like you for who you are? Not because you're marketing yourself some way or you're selling yourself some way. Right. I mean, with sales, obviously you need to sell, dude. That's what you're there to do. But I think in personal relationships, it really helps you look in the mirror and be like, who am I? What am I looking for in friendships and other like encounters that I have, and truly, what do I want to? I
Yeah,
think it makes it, it's so funny. The more you learn about marketing and sales, the more of an honest person that you become internally.
I agree. Yeah. Comes back to the self-awareness that you're talking about earlier about, taking time to think. What is your process going to be for the near future here as you're like crystallizing exactly where you're going to live and, the lifestyle and all that stuff?
Mhm. Yeah, as far as like I'm pretty much dedicated on Barcelona. Everything is kind of set. I mean, paperwork, I looked at all the requirements, I meet all of them. And ideally, we're going to be one there before my birthday, which is like around middle of June. We should work, takes 15 to 45 days to get the visa. Then after that, there are things where I want to specify them. And I'm getting very, very close to exactly what I want to look like. Because it's so funny. Like I kind of sell like a is opt-ish offer. And I actually like my offer so much to the point where I'm going to be going through the thing myself. Where in the future, I kind of want to be like the guy that I work with. I kind of like exactly want his lifestyle, give or take, minus living in the US. I hate to say it. My American friends don't take any offense to this. When I went to the US for my friend's birthday, the first thing that I noticed is American people are just fat. And don't lie to yourself, people. I'm sorry if you're a little bit bulky looking, that you think like, hey, you look just a little bit buff. Dude, you have like 25 pounds to lose. How do I know? Because it was me. I was weighing 245 at 6'3". I kind of looked bulky, but I look at my pictures from back in the day, like in college. I'm like, somebody had to tap on my shoulder and be like, hey, dude, you got like 55 pounds. Like, that's extra. Like, you got to let that go.
So you don't want to live in the proximity of people who are, you don't want to live in America because of that, or is something else?
There's a bunch of stuff with the US. I don't think like the money that you earn doesn't take you that far. Like you can enjoy a way greater lifestyle. And I think that's the biggest thing that's like the biggest realization that I came to after I left the US. I was like, dude, like I don't want to live like middle class ish in the US when I can enjoy way more benefits outside of the US. And that's when you really question yourself, like, hey, what does really matter to me? And the more real you become with yourself, the less materialistic you actually become at the same time. Like, I don't think I'll ever want to own a flashy car. Like, I'm not a car person. I like nice houses. Don't get me wrong. I will always like a nice house, nice interior, all of that, because like, dude, you spent a lot of your time there. Car just takes you from A to B. But another thing is that like lifestyle is another thing of it. Me, I figured out I like to live in the center of a city, at least until I'm in like my mid to late 30s, like more about discovering about myself, right? And the things that I want to enjoy are different than the ones that I can have in the US. Like in the US, I couldn't go to a cafe at 11 p.m. and kind of like talk to people or like go on a date. Dude, I was in Barcelona. I went on a date at like 11 o'clock at night. Like I met the girl at 11 o'clock. We sat down, hung out until like 1:30. And I'm like, yeah, I like that lifestyle more. In the US, it's like 9:30, everything is shut down, go home and watch Netflix or something like that. There's not that much life. I like the
Mm.
European lifestyle way more. Like you go outside at like 11, it's like there's people out there walking, cafes, hanging out, stuff like that. Like people leisure way more.
Have you ever read the book The Sovereign Individual?
I don't think so.
So it's kind of a tough read, pretty long, but
Mhm.
I recommend checking out like the summary on it. The thesis is that now the microprocessor, like the computer, the internet, all the information revolution is going to be so much bigger than people realize. And like, obviously people are going to be able to live wherever they want and, transact with whoever they want. And there's so many, it's like a very exciting future if you are a sovereign individual, right? If you get to choose where you live and you just truly just go where you're treated best, right? So it sounds like that's what you're doing right now. That's what I'm doing right now. I still think the US has some more good years in it and could be saved, but it's kind of hard to deny at this point that like the American empire is in decline.
Yeah.
Fortunately. But there's many ascending countries. So I'm really excited to look at the ascending countries. And like I said, maybe the US can be saved, or maybe things can be turned around, but it seems like it won't be the most free place to live, like it once
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I even think about back to like the 2012, 2013 US, because I lived there back in the day, and like it was way different than what it was now. I think that when I lived there for 8 years, I became very Americanized, and I totally forgot that I'm even from Europe. Like I would just be like a regular American person. People almost couldn't tell that I was from another country most of the time. They usually still can't, unless a little bit of an accent slips in because I live in Turkey now. Um, but I'm just like, I like the leisure-ish lifestyle more. Dude, I talk to prospects every day that live in the US. In order for you to make like a good salary, like people are dying to be middle to middle upper class.
Yep.
Like I talk to these people and I genuinely feel bad for them. Because I'm like, dude, you guys are going to work 60 hours a week until you're like 60 to 65. Then, like, what are you going to do after that? It's kind of sad to see. I'm like, then I see the European people, dude, you go to Spain, people work maybe 5 hours a day, maybe six,
Yep.
right? But you're like, I bet you this person enjoys life way more than that person. Sure, you have a nice Chevy Tahoe in your driveway. You live in a $350,000 house. Your wife has a nice car, blah, blah. But I'm like, they're not living, man. Like they have all the stuff, but I don't feel like they're living, and I don't feel like they're really experiencing much. That's why all my American friends take vacations to Europe all the time, because they're like, whoa, look at this.
Yeah, there's so much the consumerism lifestyle in the US. Like you need a car to go to your job, and there's all the traps, man. Like what I really feel for is people who have student debt, and they're like, they got student
Mm,
debt to get a job that hopefully pays them over 100K, but if it pays them over less than 100K, then it's gonna take even longer for them to pay it off, and they're just like, they're not able to kind of like know themselves more because they're just stuck in the rat race. And it is like, I don't know. I question if it's intentional to kind of make people debt slaves and put them in this cycle, because I noticed like a lot of the incentives, like health insurance, for example, becomes way more expensive or challenging to get
ah,
if you're not a W-2
health
employee.
insurance is health insurance stuff is insane in the US. You know how much I pay in Turkey for full coverage for a year?
Probably like 1,200 bucks.
Yeah, like 1,500, 1,800
15.
bucks. And I'm talking like full coverage, dude. Like I went to the hospital like 3 times last year, going to the ER. They were like, hey, like you have a remaining balance of like 20 bucks. Like they did my blood work, they sent a bunch of stuff to the test lab, they gave me an IV. Like I was there for like 5, 6 hours.
That's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, um,
But I think there's one more thing to add there. People don't have enough time to upskill, like in the US. Like if you want to also get out of that situation, you don't have that much free time to be able to like develop your skills,
yeah.
you know, unless like you work in like a smaller company and you get to wear a couple more hats and like they're actually like willing to kind of like invest into your development. Other than that, dude, kind of like you're kind of like at the trajectory that like the corporate life is willing to take you through.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the time, I think learning stops after school, after college. Whereas the
Mm,
successful people label themselves lifelong learners and are continue to even pay to learn, right? Pay for Audible to have unlimited audiobooks at your disposal. Um, that's I agree though, man. If we could create a way that, like, especially as technology continues to change things, if we could create a way that people had an hour or even 2 hours every day to actually like learn new things, get better at skills, upskill yourself, like you said, I think that would be make a massive difference. This is what I'm noticing with all the younger guys who are in their like early 20s is the amount of tools and information they have available to upskill themselves or level themselves up fast is like unprecedented.
mhm.
So yeah, I think it's Naval Ravikant says, maybe we'll end it here, that with the internet, all the information you could want is available. It's just whether you have the desire to learn or not. Like that desire to learn is scarce, unfortunately.
Exactly. I always say like the day your curiosity dies, you kind of die.
Yeah, you're curious. Yeah, 100%. I think retirement equals death as well.
Yeah, actually, brain wise, it kind of does. That book that I was telling you about, they're like, hey, the best thing for anti-aging is actually learning new information because your brain is just like an engine. Like the more you spin it, the healthier and shape that it stays.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. I'm going to end it here.